Well, well, I know that both of you are going to be testifying, as it happens, before the Budget Committee, a subcommittee of the Budget Committee. John Yarmouth of Kentucky, same state as Mitch McConnell. Same state, very different guy. What are the policy specifics? And I'll start with you, Liz. I'm gonna give you your honorific, Reverend Theo Harris, Reverend Doctor.
Reverend Doctor.
Reverend Doctor.
Don't mess that up.
No, I believe you. People earn their honorifics. I'm gonna give it to them. What specific policies would you want to see? I mean, get through at least the committee, if not onto the House floor, to present before his fellow Kentuckian who runs the United States Senate.
I mean, so we are getting ready for this budget committee, right? And we're hoping all 36 members of the committee will be there and get to hear not just the sad stories, but the powerful solutions that folks are coming up with. And we're going to present into the record the poor people's moral budget. And that is the quantification of the demands of our campaign. Health care for everyone. The voting rights, living wage jobs, education free through college, the protection of indigenous sovereignty, the ends to deportation and detention. You know, all of these demands are actually in our budget, are actually in our demands. With that budget committee is put the stories and the solutions out there, because universal health care is within reach. Living wages for all and a guaranteed job that a living wage is within reach. Education that is equitable and stops this resegregation for the fullest potential of young people. It's all possible. We want it all, and we're going to get it.
And Troy, can I follow up on that?
Absolutely.
Did y'all hear what Liz said? We want it all and we're going to get it, which means this movement, yes, we're infusing ourselves into the middle of this narrative. It happens to be an election year, but if it wasn't, we'd have still started. And we're not going to stop, because that's been part of the problem too. People get all hyped up for an election season. Their candidate doesn't win, they go back home. That's not how you change this country. Never has been that way. Change has always required a mass movement and moral underpinning. There was a moral underpinning. I didn't say Christian or Jewish. I mean a moral underpinning. Abolition of slavery, trying to begin to address genocide against our native people, which we really never have. Women's suffrage, civil rights, the Social Security, the New Deal. It was a moral movement. It was the social gospel movement that changed Teddy Roosevelt and Franklin Roosevelt, his cousin. Always. So what you see here is not just, okay, it's an election cycle, and we're going to get all hyped up. And you know what? If folk happen to unelect Donald Trump, we can go home because all our problems are solved. No. That's exactly what we're not saying. What we're saying is we have to stay at this, because this didn't just start yesterday. It may have been exacerbated when Trump goes out and says the war on poverty is over. We know that's a gruesome lie. But the reality is the silence on poverty has also been gruesome and grotesque and ugly, right? And so when you see I opened my notebook, and the reason is because Liz and I and all the folk out here have committed that we're not going to be a bumper sticker, cute slogan, a group. People tell us all the time, you have to stop talking like that because you need to follow what we poll. Where the hell with what folk get polled? That's the problem. We get written out of the poll. If we followed the polls, we wouldn't have Poor People's Campaign. We wouldn't be talking about race at the front end and having white people talking about race. But we recognize there is a group of people in this country who can handle the truth and know that until we tell the truth, we cannot be set free. And so I opened my notebook because what do we want to put before this committee and what will we continue to push? $15 federal minimum wage. Look, what? But not over 10 years, immediately. Because what would that do? It would raise pay for 49 million workers by a combined $328 billion a year. And at $22 an hour, which is where it really should be if you follow inflation, 83 million workers would get $1 trillion more in pay. And these pay raises would dwarf the $7.1 billion in so-called tax cut bonuses. We want to talk about that. We want to talk about, Joy, that comprehensive immigration reform would allow millions of families to live in security, and one immigration proposal in Congress would cost the federal government $26 billion, but it would be balanced by $46 billion in new revenue. We want to talk about that if you invest $37.2 billion a year in water infrastructure, it would create 945,000 new jobs. And that $337 billion is less than what the Pentagon awarded to one corporation. Less than one. What we are arguing is that our politics have been so dumbed down and made so anemic and so small that we're not really dealing with issues. And we've allowed people to just run for office and never get into the meat. For instance, we could save as much as $350 billion a year by cutting the current Pentagon spending for fighting endless wars, maintaining a worldwide network of 800 military bases, stoking dangerous arms races, and subsidizing for-profit corporate contractors, which, by the way, a combat soldier makes less than $40,000 a year, while a CEO of a for-profit defense contract makes $19 million a year. And even if we cut $350 billion, our military budget would still be larger than China, Russia, and Iran combined. If we don't have these conversations in the middle of a narrative and address these issues, something is at stake more than the next election and whether Trump gets reelected. The very question of can America be is at stake. Because you cannot leave 43.5% of your nation poverty and low wealth and think the bottom of that pyramid is not going to crack and the whole pyramid is going to implode.
Well, you know, on that very point,
The bottom of that pyramid is going to crack and the whole thing implode. Reverend Barbara Askia and King on fire here with these comments.
It's growing so far a much greater ovation than most of the speakers. Reverend Barber has really energized the crowd.
He certainly has. Your thoughts on what you just heard?
And he's doing a little filler because candidate Castro did not show up, and so they skipped
That's
from Biden,
what we're hearing.
from Biden
Julian
to Yang.
Castro,
and so,
no show.
So, he's pretty fast on his feet, and he got people moving by filling in that gap of time. But we're not really sure what's going to happen next. We've heard, at one point there were 10 candidates. Now they were saying that, there were 3 more, and we've heard 2. So
Yeah,
we're up in the air.
You know what? What I'd like to raise now is something that we have been discussing here on this is the Pacifica Radio National coverage, and we are here at the Poor People's Congress, and this is a pause in the presidential candidates forum.
We're waiting for Senator Michael Bennet.
Senator Michael Bennet is at the next one up. But one of the things we have been discussing has been the issues of foreign affairs and military spending in relation. We've so far touched on what happened in Egypt with the death of Morsi. We've talked about Iran, a little bit about Palestine, Sudan. And for our next guest, who is Sam Weinstein, a labor guy, former assistant to the president of the Utility Workers Union of America, and before that, the local of the president of Local 132, the gas company workers in Southern California, but also has been now based in the UK, right? You kind of went back and forth between the U.S. and the U.K. And there you have been involved with Momentum, which is a movement outside of the Labour Party, but in support of Jeremy Corbyn. And we're going to be hearing from Bernie Sanders later in the day. And a lot of people have contrasted Bernie Sanders with Jeremy Corbyn. And I'm wondering, given your take on what you're seeing from the movement on the ground in the UK, contrasting that with here, I mean, do you make that, the relationship between Bernie and Corbyn? But also, one of the things you said as a critique of what you've heard so far is that you haven't.
The Poor People's Campaign. We need a Poor People's Campaign in the UK, and that's part of what Jeremy Corbyn has been for us. It is precisely that, and Momentum, and part of the reason I volunteer at Momentum is because I want to encourage developing that movement, and developing that kind of a movement, but it has to be an international movement. We cannot think of these things in national terms any longer. That's just impossible.
So how far along is this movement there? Are there actions in small cities? Has it gotten to the point where there's national coordination? What's happening?
Yes, Momentum is national. One of the great. It burst out of this movement to elect Jeremy Corbyn head of the Labour Party, which was reinforced in the last election when we robbed Theresa May of a majority, right? Which was a tremendous
Theresa
victory.
May, the Tories, the conservative,
Tories, yes, the
equivalent to the Republican Party here.
That movement has developed, and so there are local groups, probably somewhere around 150 local groups around the country, which do their own thing, but then sometimes we coordinate stuff as needed to do something nationally. Like there was a challenge from what I call the fascists, the Brexit Party in England. I don't know how much you know about it here, but there was a by-election in Peterborough, and it was a chance for the fascists to actually get a foothold in Parliament. And people came from all over the country. Just 700 people were canvassing in that one area from all over.